price of the ETF is $21.07, net asset value of $21.05, and total assets of $1.086 billion.
Bitcoin Zella stands out with its simplicity and clarity. We've crafted an experience that anyone can dive into, whether you're a crypto expert or just a new to the crypto world. Now guess who keeps his eye on us? The author of best-selling book Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. And we want to take this opportunity and thank all the people who trusted us, and we read every comment. And the best part, it's free. Subscribing now means you will get all new information for free. Don't just follow the trends, stay ahead of them. Subscribe to Bitcoin Zella today and enjoy the new edge. Tom Lee breaks down Bitcoin's all-time high and Moody's downgrade. $GRNY leads with AI and cybersecurity. Let's dive in.
Now, this ratings action took place on Friday, May 16th, so just about a week ago, but we don't believe there's much signal here. One of the reasons is that Moody's is the last to downgrade the U.S. from AAA. The first one was the S&P Standard & Poor's in 2011. That was a lot of signal. The second one was Fitch when they did this in August 2023. And of course, now we have Moody's. So they're really the third ones. I mean, in some ways, let's be realistic. The stock market and the bond market would have already figured this out. Like I said, the bond market anticipated the ratings change. And the U.S. essentially lost its AAA status because of the way split ratings work in 2023. And realistically, the corporate cost of debt is largely unchanged. I mean, even high yield has barely moved. Corporate earnings visibility is largely unchanged. Demand by consumers isn't really going to be affected by this downgrade. And I think bears want the stock market to fall, but to me, this is purely just incremental, and I don't think there's much signal. And that gets us to this point, which is, in many ways, this remains one of the most hated stock market rallies. You know, it seems like investors are looking for reasons for stocks to fall rather than for stocks to rise. And part of this is understandable. We had a black swan event in post-tariff liberation day, and a black swan event meaning an unexpected event, and we had a 20% fall in stocks in a very short period of time. But most hated rallies are not something new. After the COVID low, that was a most hated rally. When stocks began to rally after March 2020, many fund managers said we're still in a bear market. And recall, in the fall of 2022, after the markets made its low in October 2022, a lot of investors were saying that this was just another bear market rally. Investors are about to make a mistake again. So again, a most hated rally. And of course, we have the same chorus of skeptics saying stocks have had a good bounce, but we think we're going to retest the lows. But here's the reality. Investors flip bullish as soon as you make an all-time high. So in other words, investors generally fight after a decline. They'll fight the rally until you make a new all-time high. So basically what happens? Well, at a new high, they turn around and become bullish. And I think that that's going to happen, that as soon as markets make a new all-time high, they turn bullish. And here's where things stand today. We're more than 17% above the lows and only 3% away from the highs. So it won't take a lot for investors to turn bullish if we can reattain that 61.47. So is there firepower to drive this? Yes. For instance, in the latest Bank of America Fund Manager Survey, the U.S. stock market is the most consensus underweight. In other words, most fund managers agree to underweight the U.S. Well, that's a contrarian signal to me because when they're all underweight U.S., that means that you've priced in a lot of bad news.
Robert Kiyosaki, the well-known author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, is doubling down on Bitcoin, and his message is louder than ever. Getting rich with Bitcoin is unbelievably easy. He believes that even a small investment like 0.1 Bitcoin, roughly $11,000, could become priceless in just a couple of years. For Kiyosaki, this moment in history might be the easiest time ever to build real wealth and gain financial freedom. Kiyosaki points to Bitcoin's fixed supply as the reason behind its skyrocketing value. echoing analyst Raoul Pal's sentiment. He says Bitcoin is heading into what they call the banana zone, a period of explosive growth. He urges people not to be yellow bananas, a metaphor for fear or inaction, and instead to learn from voices like Raoul Pal, Michael Saylor, and Anthony Pompliano, who have championed Bitcoin for years. Adding fuel to the fire, Bitcoin recently surged past $110,000, boosted by strong institutional demand and positive geopolitical shifts. With $2.75 billion flowing into Bitcoin ETF and fears of U.S. hyperinflation growing, Kiyosaki's call to action is simple: wake up, invest wisely, and don't miss the opportunity of a lifetime.
One of the leading indicators for stocks is Bitcoin, and Bitcoin hit an all-time high this week and has continued to power through that. So Bitcoin's prior all-time high was January 2025 at 109,000. And on May 21st, Bitcoin made a closing high above that level and has continued to power higher. I think that's a leading indicator for the S&P because Bitcoin peaked about a month before the S&P did. And they're both being driven by the same thing, that global liquidity is increasing. And this tweet by Raoul Pal really highlights the relationship between Bitcoin and M2. As for granny shots, now when we break it down by themes, again, there's 7 themes in the granny shots. Seasonality is the best performing relative to the S&P, outperforming by 320 basis points. Again, this is led by Palantir. The second is global labor suppliers, and that's led by stocks like Tesla, NVIDIA, AMD. And the third is energy and cybersecurity, and that's led by names like ANET, Palantir, GE Vernova, CrowdStrike, and Palo Alto Networks. Finally, before I sort of close this video, I just want to remind you that really, if you look back at the last 2 weeks, but really since April, one of the lessons we've learned is it really paid off to actually not do too much, take too many dramatic actions. I know it's really hard instinct to fight, but it's a reminder of the rule of 10 best days, that if you miss the 10 best days in the stock market, you really have dramatically lower returns. And I've talked about this before, but to give you an example, since 2015, the S&P's returned 12% a year. But if you miss the 10 best days, you've actually had negative 10% performance, or 2,200 basis points of underperformance.
Bitcoin is back in the spotlight, soaring to nearly $110,000 after a roller coaster weekend. The major boost came after U.S. President Trump decided to pause the looming tariffs against the EU, which were set to take effect on June 1. That news sent a wave of optimism through the market, lifting both Bitcoin and the broader crypto space. Earlier last week, Bitcoin had already been flirting with new highs. After battling resistance near $107,000, the bulls broke through midweek, sending the price past $109,100 and then up to a fresh all-time high of $112,000 on Thursday. Fittingly, pizza day in the crypto world. However, Friday's unexpected tariff announcement caused an instant market dip, dragging BTC below $107,500. But as soon as the pause on tariffs was announced, Bitcoin rebounded swiftly during Asia's Monday session. Currently, Bitcoin sits comfortably near $110,000, with a market cap of $2.18 trillion and a commanding 61.1% dominance over altcoins. Meanwhile, HALAP continues to amaze. Despite a recent exploit targeting its official X account, the coin pushed past resistance to hit nearly $40, gaining over 12% in 24 hours. It was only outpaced by GEP, Virtual, and FET. The total crypto market has now swelled to $3.57 trillion, showing renewed strength across the board. If you've been with us so far, a big thank you. Don't forget to subscribe for free to Bitcoin Zella for your daily news. The link is waiting below. That's all for today's crypto news. Stick around for more updates, insights, and analysis on cryptocurrencies. Share your thoughts in the comments, like this video, and subscribe for more exciting content.